Was she going to die alone in that frozen cabin, abandoned by the man she crossed the country to marry? Snow covered the Montana mountains like a white blanket that never ended. The cold was sharp and bitter, and it felt like it reached straight into Sarah's bones. She pressed her face against the frosted window of the small cabin, trying to keep her hope alive. Her breath fogged up the glass, but the cold air quickly took it away. 3 long days had passed since Tom Bradley had ridden off and never returned. He left only a short note and the painful truth that he no longer wanted her. The fire in the cabin had died. The ashes looked cold and empty in the hearth. Sarah pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, but it hardly kept her warm. Her wedding dress, once white and beautiful, hung on a wooden peg. It no longer looked like a dress meant for a happy future. It looked like a reminder of her broken dream. She had traveled from Chicago to marry a man she had never seen before. She carried nothing but hope and a small leather bag with a few belongings. Tom's letters had promised her a life of comfort on a ranch. He wrote about a warm home, animals, land, and a future where they would build a life together. But the truth was nothing like his letters. She had been left in a cold, leaking cabin in the middle of nowhere. The food was almost gone. She had been eating small bites of stale bread and beans to make it last. Hunger now felt like a living thing inside her. If she stayed here much longer, she knew she would not survive. A sudden sound cut through the wind outside. It was the steady chop of an axe hitting wood. Sarah's heart jumped with a mix of fear and hope. She rushed to the window and wiped the frost with her hand. Through the falling snow, she saw a tall man cutting wood near the tree line. His movements were strong and sure. He split the logs like he had done it his whole life. The cold air turned his breath to mist, but he kept working with steady strength. Even from a distance, Sarah could tell he was not an ordinary man. This had to be Jake Morrison, the neighbor Tom mentioned only once. Tom described him as a mountain man who lived alone, someone who kept to himself. Jake stopped chopping and lifted his head. It felt like he could sense her watching. Sarah stepped away from the window in fear and uncertainty. Would he help her or judge her? Would he think she was a burden, the same way Tom did? Minutes passed, each one feeling longer than the last. Then she heard footsteps on the porch. Heavy boots. A firm knock on the door followed. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She slowly reached for the door, her hand shaking. When she opened it, she came face to face with Jake Morrison. He stood tall in the doorway, over 6 feet, with wide shoulders and a strong frame. Snow clung to his dark hair and his thick beard. His face was serious, but his brown eyes were calm and steady. His coat was made of animal hide, and snowshoes were strapped to his boots. He looked like a man shaped by the mountains. "Ma'am," he said in a low, steady voice, "I'm Jake Morrison. I live up the ridge. I noticed there was no smoke from this chimney for 2 days. Thought I should check." Quote. His voice held no judgment, only concern. Sarah felt both relieved and ashamed at the same time. "Tom left," she said softly. 3 days ago. He said he was not ready for marriage. He never came back." Jake listened without changing his expression, but something in his eyes showed understanding. He glanced around the cabin, taking in the cold, the empty shelves, and the weak walls. "You got any food left?" he asked. "A little," Sarah replied, though they both knew it was almost gone. "Winter does not care about trying," Jake said. His voice carried the simple truth of mountain life. "You cannot stay here. This place will not hold heat, and that roof is ready to fall in." Sarah felt tears pushing up. If she could not stay here, then where could she go? She had no money, no family to return to, and nowhere to travel. The nearest town was far away, and the roads were blocked with deep snow. "I have nowhere else," she whispered. "I spent everything to come here." Jake nodded, as if he expected that answer. Tom Bradley was never a man who cared for much besides himself. Quote, he took a breath, then spoke with the calm certainty of a man who did not offer words lightly. "My cabin has heat and food. You can stay there until spring. No payment needed." Sarah looked at him with shock. "I have nothing to give you. I cannot repay you." "Did not ask for anything," Jake said. "Up here, people help each other, or nobody survives." He looked at the sky. Snow was falling harder. "Storm is getting worse. We should leave now." Sarah packed her small bag. The only thing she left behind was the wedding dress. She could not carry that broken dream any longer. Jake walked ahead through the snow, making a clear path for her to follow. She struggled to keep up in the deep snow, but he always reached back to steady her when she slipped. He did not speak, but his presence made her feel safe for the first time since arriving in Montana. When they reached his cabin, Sarah stopped in awe. It was strong, warm, and built with care. Smoke rose from the chimney. Wood was stacked neatly for winter. It looked like a home made to last. Inside, Jake told her to sit by the fire while he cooked. The warmth wrapped around her like a blanket, and for the first time in days, she felt hope. She watched him move around the cabin, quiet and capable. He did not treat her like a burden. He treated her like a person who deserved care. Sarah did not know it yet, but this was the first moment of a new life. A life she never expected. A life that might bring her the kind of love no letter had ever promised. Sarah woke the next morning to the smell of warmth and comfort. Jake was already up, stirring the fire and cooking breakfast. She sat up slowly, wrapped in the quilt he had given her the night before. For the first time in many nights, she had slept peacefully. Jake handed her a warm bowl of oatmeal with honey. Simple food, but to Sarah it felt like a feast. She thanked him softly, and he only nodded, as if it was natural to care for someone in need. The storm outside continued to blow against the cabin, but inside it felt safe. Jake moved with calm confidence as he checked the windows, added wood to the fire, and made sure everything was secure. Sarah watched him with growing respect. He did everything with quiet purpose. As the day went on and the storm showed no sign of slowing, Sarah offered to help with chores inside the cabin. At first, Jake told her to rest, but she insisted. "I need to be useful," she said gently. "I can't just sit while you do everything." He thought for a moment, then nodded. Together they worked in the warm cabin. Sarah mended a torn shirt of his. Her fingers worked the needle with skill, surprising even herself. Jake watched her sew with a thoughtful look. "You're good at that," he said. "It was my job in Chicago," Sarah replied. "I was a seamstress. I liked it. I liked creating something with my hands." "You'll do more of that here," Jake said. "Folks in town always need mending done." Later that afternoon, when the wind quieted a little, Jake put on his coat and boots. "I need to check the barn," he said. "Storm or no storm, the animals need care." Quote, "Let me come with you," Sarah asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Stay close to me. Snow's deep." They walked through the snow to the barn. Inside, the air was cold but calm. 2 horses stood in their stalls, along with a cow and several chickens. Sarah watched Jake work. He checked the animals, spoke to them in a soft voice, and moved with kindness and respect. He showed her how to feed them, how to check the cow's water, and what to look for to make sure the animals were well. Sarah listened carefully and helped with every task. By the time they finished, her hands were cold, but her heart was warm. She felt proud that she could help. "You learn fast," Jake said as they walked back to the cabin. "Most people from the cities need time to adjust, but you fit right into this life." Sarah felt a shy smile form on her lips. "Maybe I was never meant for city life." Inside again, they warmed up by the fire. The storm continued through the night, trapping them inside for 2 more days. They fell into a peaceful routine. They cooked together, talked for hours, and shared stories about their pasts. Sarah learned that Jake had come to the mountains after serving as a soldier in the war. He spoke little about it, but she could tell the memories were heavy. He came to the mountains for peace, to live life in a simple and honest way. "Were you lonely?" she asked one night as they sat near the fire. "At first," Jake answered. "But the mountain teaches you things. It gives you quiet. It gives you time to think. Being alone isn't the same as being lonely." Sarah nodded. "I was lonely in Chicago, even with people all around. But here, I don't feel that." Not anymore. Jake looked at her then, his brown eyes warm. Maybe you just needed the right place and the right people. Sarah felt her heart flutter. She wondered if he meant himself. That night, she lay awake for a long time. She thought about the life she left behind. She had no family, no home to return to. Tom had not just broken a promise. He had tried to take her hope. But here in this cabin with this quiet, good man, she felt a sense of belonging she had never felt before. She felt seen, valued, safe. On the third morning, the storm finally ended. The world outside the window looked like a winter painting. Snow covered everything in a perfect white sheet. Sarah stood beside Jake at the door, taking it in. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It is," Jake agreed. "But it also means we need to check the land. After a storm like that, things change fast." They bundled up and went outside together. As they walked through the snow, Sarah felt a new strength in her steps. She was beginning to understand this life. It was hard, yes, but it was real. They reached the barn, and Jake was showing her how to check the roof when a sound made him stop. The steady beat of horse hooves approached from the trail below. Jake's whole body changed. His jaw tightened and his eyes sharpened. Something in his instincts warned him this wasn't a friendly visit. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. Sarah's breath caught. A rider moved through the snow toward them. When the man came into view, Sarah felt her heart drop. It was Tom Bradley. He was back, and nothing about his return felt right. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know. Tom Bradley stopped his horse a few steps from the barn. His face was red from the cold, but his eyes held the same selfish look Sarah remembered. He looked at Jake with a mix of anger and forced confidence. "Morrison," Tom said, trying to sound calm, "I came for my bride. Sarah came here to marry me. I have come to take her home." Jake stood tall and steady. He did not raise his voice. He did not step back. He stood like a wall between Sarah and the man who had left her to freeze. "You left her alone in winter," Jake said. "A man who rides away and leaves a woman without food or fire has no right to call her his bride." Tom looked annoyed, but he tried to smile. "Sarah understands. I had business in town. Snow stopped me from returning. I did not mean to leave her that long. Sarah knows I care for her." Quote, he looked at Sarah as if expecting her to agree. Sarah stepped forward, her chin lifted with courage she did not know she had before. "No, Tom," she said firmly. "If you cared for me, you would not have left. You would have made sure I was safe. You did not." Tom's smile dropped. "You are my mail-order bride. You belong to me." Sarah felt Jake move slightly closer to her, ready to protect her if needed. She took a steady breath. "I do not belong to anyone," she said. "You did not value me. You saw me as something to use and throw away. I am not going anywhere with you." Tom looked angry now. "So you choose him. A mountain man with nothing. You think he is better than a life with me in town." Jake spoke before Sarah could answer. "She chooses respect. She chooses a life where she is safe and valued. That is more than you ever offered her." Tom glared at Jake. "You cannot steal her. There are laws." Jake did not move. His voice stayed calm. "There are laws against abandonment. You left her in danger. That ends any claim you think you had." For a moment, no one spoke. Snow fell softly around them. Sarah felt a cold on her face, but her heart was steady. She was not afraid. Tom looked at her again with anger and disbelief. "You will regret this. That mountain man cannot give you a real life. He will trap you here. You want a home and family. He has nothing." Sarah reached for Jake's hand. "He has more than you ever gave me. He has honesty, kindness, a good heart. That is the life I want." Tom stared at her, stunned that she would not bend to his power. He pulled on his horse's reins. "Fine," he said. "You made your choice. Do not come running back when you learn how hard this life is." Jake kept his eyes on Tom. "Leave these mountains with peace. Do not return." Tom turned his horse and rode away. His figure grew smaller until he disappeared down the snowy path. Sarah let out a breath she had been holding. Jake turned to her, worry softening from his eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "For the first time in my life, I truly am." Jake held her hands. Snow swirled around them like a quiet blessing from the mountains. He looked at her with a warmth that reached her heart. "Sarah," he said, "I know life up here can be hard, but I want to face every season with you, as partners, as husband and wife. Will you marry me?" Sarah felt tears of joy fill her eyes. "Yes, Jake, I will. With all my heart." Jake smiled, and it was a smile full of hope and love. He lifted her into his arms and kissed her. It was gentle and warm, full of promise for the life ahead. They returned to the cabin hand in hand. The fire burned bright. The room felt like home. Sarah looked around and knew she had found the place she belonged. Not by chance, by choice. Spring came months later. Flowers bloomed across the valley. Sarah stood outside the cabin that was now truly her home. She had learned to care for the animals, sew for the town, and live the mountain life with skill and pride. She had become strong and confident. Jake walked toward her with a smile, his eyes full of love that never faded. He wrapped his arm around her, and they looked out over the land that was now theirs. They built a life with hard work and heart. A life filled with laughter, love, and a future they would share side by side. The mountains had brought them together, and love kept them there. The abandoned mail-order bride had become the cherished wife of a mountain man who loved her more than anyone ever had. Sarah had not only survived. She had found a love she never expected, and a home where she was treasured. And in the quiet beauty of the mountains, their love story became a promise that would last through every winter and every spring that followed.